from my point of view, that shattered the thesis because you're in uncharted waters now. I couldn't see this thing working out in a good way.
In today's episode, we're going to find out why legendary value investor Mohnish Pabrai has sold completely out of Micron Technology stock. He lays out his thesis for why he bought it in the first place, how that's changed, and why he sold. Hi, I'm JJ with The Art of Value. Let's get straight into it.
The Micron thesis was built around the fact that it was a rational oligopoly. So there are three players, Samsung, Hynix, and Micron. Samsung and Hynix are in Korea. I met with Samsung and Hynix multiple times in Seoul.
Interesting that he met with the company. Some investors don't like to meet with management because the CEOs and some management can be really good salespeople. So if you're an investor asking questions, they're trying to sell you on the company and get a bit overexcited by what they say rather than being more rational, taking a step back and looking at it, but also pretty informative about the company because the CEO in particular and the management are in the best position to know about the company. That's why insider buying, when insiders buy shares, that's also a good sign, can be a good sign.
I'd had a conversation with Charlie about oligopolies when I was looking at this whole situation about rational oligopolies and so on. And Charlie brought up a very interesting case study data.
Wouldn't it be great to be able to talk to Charlie Munger about investing and oligopolies, pick his brain about what he knows about oligopolies and different types of investing, which Mohnish Pabrai has been able to do over the years. Not anymore, but he was a good friend of Charlie Munger.
He said that Buffett had studied Coke and Pepsi bottlers in virtually every geography he could around the world. And he found that in something like 95 or 97% of cases, both the bottlers made a lot of money. It was a great business for both of them. But he also found in like 3 to 5% of cases where neither of them made any money. What happened is that the Coke bottler or the Pepsi bottler in a particular geography decided that they wanted to dramatically increase market share. And so they dropped their pricing dramatically in the hopes of raising volumes. And of course, there was a reaction from the other party who also dropped their pricing. And so they got into these bidding wars where the consumer basically ended up winning and neither of them could back off. So he found that there were a few geographies, maybe 3% or something, where Coke bottling or Pepsi bottling was not a good business. And the rest of the places it was good.
Interesting to hear about this case study of Coke bottlers around the world that Warren Buffett himself did. So that's definitely something to listen to. And Mohnish Pabrai does own a Coke bottler and other beverages in Turkey. Now, if you're getting value out of this episode so far, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button to help the algorithm to spread it to more people, because that's what we want. Thanks.
So basically, when I met with Samsung, they were very clear that they had 50% market share. They did not want more than 50% market share. They said, quote unquote, bad things happen to us when we go over 50%. And they were actually the low-cost producer when I was first making the investment. So I asked them this question. I said, look, you're the low-cost producer. You can drop your prices to a point where your other two competitors will actually start bleeding and you will still be making money. And they said, we know that. And we also have this 50% rule where we don't want more than 50% market share. So we are happy to have healthy competitors and, keep it at that. And when I met with Hynix and Samsung, it was the same situation. So basically, when you have these oligopolies, it is illegal for them to sit in a room and collude on pricing, right? I mean, that would be, you're going to jail if you're doing that.
So he's saying there that they were happy with the situation, happy with the oligopoly situation, where everybody has a certain amount of market share and everybody's okay in that position, although they can't talk about that. It's illegal to do that, to get into a room, to collude on pricing, but they do have a way that they can sort of agree on their market position. And as long as everybody stays that way, nobody tries to have more than the market share that everybody's happy with, then things can go on and everybody can make money.
But they do what the airlines do. So American Airlines will drop its price on a particular route, and 5 minutes later, United will announce that they've changed their pricing as well. The way they communicate with each other is through the marketplace. And what I noticed when I was looking at Micron and Hynix and Samsung is that the three companies issued a lot of press releases. And I was really confused why they issue so many press releases. And then I realized they're not talking to me. They're talking to each other and they're signaling to each other. So they would always say in the press release that, we are at such and such capacity and this is our CapEx budget and this is what we're expecting to do. And then the next guy, after 2 days, will issue a very similar press release. And after 2 days, the third guy releases. So I was convinced that this was a rational oligopoly. The memory business is a very complex business. It's virtually impossible for a fourth player to enter the space. It's a really complicated technology. There's just too many patents. And, you would have to violate patents left and right. Even if you're willing to violate all the patents, the processes are complicated. So the Chinese have been trying forever, for example. They will not have a credible memory business that can go up against these three guys.
So what he's saying here is, in other words, high barriers to entry in this industry where there's three players in an oligopoly situation. There's these very expensive plants, huge expertise involved in the memory business. So it's just these players that are unlikely to change. Three players locked in this oligopoly situation as he saw it, the thesis that he worked out at the time.
So that was the thesis. But then what happened is in late 21 and 22, Samsung got antsy and decided they wanted more market share and they wanted to increase their profits. They basically increased production, reduced margin, causing pain. And by then, actually, what had happened is Micron had become the low-cost producer. They had actually moved up the curve. Sanjay Mehrotra was executing really well. But once that happened, from my point of view, that shattered the thesis because you're in uncharted waters now. And you're basically violating the core fundamentals of what our whole thesis was on.
He's saying the thesis got disrupted by Samsung going after more market share instead of being comfortable in this oligopoly situation. They thought they could get more market share, but it disrupted what he saw as the thesis.
I couldn't see this thing working out in a good way. The second things that started happening, which was also unexpected, was the US-China trade wars and all these intellectual property wars. And Micron became a big casualty of that. So China banned a bunch of Micron products and different things. And that helped the other two players, but it hurt Micron.
This has been something that happened this year, this China-US trade war that's heated up over chips. Definitely been in the media where this sort of tit for tat, and it did perceive to hurt Micron. He's basically saying there was too much risk for him. The situation changed. There's too much risk. So there's two factors.
So when I saw that there's the US-China situation, which is hard to forecast and predict.
This is where he said it's hard to forecast and predict. So in terms of probability, I think what he's talking about there is the probability changed. When investing is about probabilities, it changed from being high probability bet, more risk because the probability is lower that it could work out. He couldn't forecast it, couldn't predict it, didn't know what was going to happen to a high enough probability to stay with the investment.
We had, maybe 60, 70% gain on the stock over the years. I thought we would get a lot more. So I said, okay, we take our chips off the table. The investment didn't work as well as we thought, and the thesis didn't work. We'll take the money and play elsewhere.
60 to 70% gain from the time that he had the stock isn't too bad. We'll have a look at his activity in Micron and when he sold. And I do remember that Li Lu sold at the same time in the same quarters. So we'll just take a look at that. Now, if you're a subscriber here, you might like to know that I've started the Art of Value Patreon community. For just the price of a cup of coffee each month, I'll be providing exclusive videos, ad-free videos, of course. And I'll be talking about some of the stocks that I own, what I'm researching, my thoughts on the market, my thoughts on different investors, and all sorts of things. So I'll put a link in the description. Hopefully see you over there. Now we can see here Pabrai Investments, Mohnish Pabrai's portfolio. We can see the activity. We can see in Q2 2023, he sold out 100% from what he had then. And we can see in Q1 2023, he reduced it 14.44%. So he was obviously changing his mind then, not fully out of it. We just don't know exactly when he sold it, but we do know in those quarters that he sold out then. So the thesis changed for him in Q1 and Q2 2023. We can see before that in Q4 2022, he had added a little bit to Micron. In Q4 2021, he was adding 15.49% to it then, adding to Micron periodically over the quarters, 210% adding to in Q1 2019, and he bought it for the first time in Q4 2018, which just shows you how things can change. Keep checking in on the company or the sector and see the dynamics of the sector. It was really the dynamics of the sector and the geopolitical situation that changed there. Warren Buffett did a similar thing when he bought Taiwan Semiconductor. He said it's one of the best businesses in the world. And then these tensions, these geopolitical tensions between China and the US made him sell out of that. It was quite a decently big position that he was building there, and he changed his mind, sold out, said it was a great company in a bad location. Here we can see Himalaya Capital Management, which is Li Lu. Very good and value investor Li Lu, who invests money for, or did invest money for Charlie Munger. I'm not sure what's happened to that. I'm sure he's still got it there, but I guess it would be in the state now. And we can see that Micron Technology, he sold out in that same quarter as Mohnish, sold out 100% in Q2 2023. And in Q1 2023, he sold 40%. So very similar sales to Mohnish then. Mohnish has said that he and Li Lu collaborated on the thesis for Micron. Just guessing, I would say that they talked again. Li Lu and Mohnish Pabrai talked about the thesis, and they both sold out in the same quarters, selling down a little bit and then selling more. I wouldn't be surprised if they've been talking to each other through that time, seeing they collaborated on the thesis and they agreed that it changed and sold out. That would be my guess anyway. Now, if we have a look at the recent share price for Micron Technology, and with the knowledge that we know when both Li Lu and Mohnish Pabrai sold out of the stock, we can see that it's had a pretty good year, as many tech stocks have, despite this geopolitical situation. And I think that could be because of the AI mini bubble, or the exuberance that we see for AI. Obviously, Micron is involved in that. They do have various technologies involved in AI, so I think that's helped the stock. Mohnish and Li Lu have both sold out because the long-term thesis, the thesis they got into, has been disrupted. So they wouldn't really care about that AI situation that's sort of riding a mini bubble, as I said. And Mohnish has said he thinks it's a bubble in that sector at the moment. They both finished selling out in Q2 2023, and we can see since then it's up about 32%. So it's kept going up, but they wouldn't really care about that because it could have gone down. Their thesis is not in place anymore. Now, I'd love to know what you think. Do you think that Mohnish Pabrai and Li Lu have made a good decision here by selling out of Micron at this time? Do you still own the stock? Do you think the thesis is still intact? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, I'm going to put here a previous video I made on Mohnish Pabrai about Micron Technology. And here I'm going to put a link to a video that YouTube thinks that you in particular should watch next. And thanks everyone for watching or listening, and I'll see you in the next one.